What ancient and twisted Eldar tech has Vect kept in reserve to ensure his reign over the heart of the Dark Eldari's city continues? Friends, let's find out, and welcome to another 40k video. So Vect at this time is unleashing these weapons whilst under attack, with so much of the Dark City in open rebellion against him. The rebels are allied to the Archon, Yalithian, and spoilers from here for Path of the Archon. As his first weapons, Vect has made twisted versions of the Eldari Wraith Lords. He has dubbed them Castigators. They shared the same curving bones, but they had many additional weapons to their slim forms that were made from wraithbone and other psychoplastic materials, stolen from Eldari craft worlds, and with the classic dark twists. There were not the usual single spirit stones on these Castigators, but many embedded into them, a dozen or more, and each stone has a soul caught at the moment of death. In the book it notes, ranks of the gleaming constructs stretched away into the depths of the vault, vected hundreds, perhaps thousands, and if you neared these stones and were sensitive to them, then you struggle to keep the tortured voices of the dead at bay. Over the millennia, the Dark Eldar had still preyed upon their craftworld kin, just as they preyed on every other living thing in the galaxy. Vect had gathered the fruits of their labours and turned them into weapons to keep his own people under control. Vect releases his castigators against those who are rebelling against him, and so at his gesture, within the vaults, thousands of the smooth-skinned war machines shook themselves into wakefulness. The tortured, insane ghosts inhabiting their shells awoke to the light of another dawn that was to be marked only by perfidy and horror. Ancient heroes, ordinary citizens, traumatized veterans, innocent criminals, the insane, all became one inside the nightmarish mannequins they had been sealed into. As they were roused into wakefulness, their composite personalities were goaded on by falsehoods and lies. The unending wars they fought were each their own version of reality. Some saw themselves emerging from their vaults into a shining city bathed in golden sunlight, beset by nightmarish monstrosities. Others saw only a smoke-wreathed battlefield, refilled with mortal enemies from the past. Some of the captive stones believed that they fought to protect their long-dead loved ones, others that their opportunity for vengeance had come at last. For others, unreasoning fear or rampant murder, lust, were motivation enough to lash out at the living. And they rose and fought all over Vect's kingdom. On Yolosk, Tia Archon, Zubael had declared her intention to follow Yalithian's leadership to her coterie of pretty Archons. Not all had welcomed it, and some had to be silenced because of that. A brief, vicious skirmish ensued through the chambers and corridors of Zubael's home that left her warriors scattered and disorganized. Zubael had never known that the foundations of her stronghold on Yolosk abutted a long-buried castigator vault. Her walls shook and crumbled as the war machines blasted their way to the surface. Zubael's last sight as she lay pinned beneath the fallen rubble was of steel warriors with arms and legs like knife blades climbing out of the pit to end her life, and they fought on the docks and in the shadowed depths. They fought too. Everywhere the defeated fighters cursed the terrible weapons wielded by the new army with their seemingly unstoppable resolve. Word soon began to spread that Vect had called upon the unquiet dead to become his foot soldiers against the living, and he has another deadly weapon to call on. The Lamea. They are the stolen sons the Dark Eldar stuffed into the webway to light Komora. To use them, Vect fakes his death so that his enemies will gather at the sight of their perceived victory, and then he will strike. Vect here is explaining the history behind this weapon. Valzo Sinister contained the last beaten remnants of a cult from afar, far back in Komora's history. It was a time so long ago that I had not yet achieved the dominance that I so richly deserve. The cult attempted to seize power over the suffering the cultists could inflict on the city, only that they were challenged. The most terrible weapon, I am Vect, and I fear to use nothing to assert my will. These next events are watched through a crystal. The stolen suns, usually wan and sickly looking, had swelled in the sky over High Komora until they almost filled it. The light brightened impossibly until the crystal panes looked like sheets of white-hot metal. They were solar cultists, Vect smiled. They worshipped and tended to the stolen suns. In later times it would become known as the gaze of Vect. All Comorites would shudder to remember the day when Vect called down the stolen suns to scour the darkness from High Comora. All the horrors of the disjunction came to be forgotten in the face of the retribution it incurred. Around the White Flame's fortress, the fortress of Elithian, who is leading the rebels, the air shimmered with heat haze under the focused glare of the stolen suns. As the temperatures skyrocketed, within seconds mandrakes and urgles were physically shriveled in the hideous blaze, their withered forms immolating like scraps of paper beneath a blowtorch. The great seething mass of the shadow horde, caught on the plain, was utterly annihilated, torn apart and burned to ash by the unrelenting suns. Elithian's followers fled for shelter. They thought themselves safe inside the White Flame's fortress. It was buttressed by impenetrable shields of force, protected on all sides, and air and sustenance could be supplied indefinitely. But this protection was not to be. The ring of flames tightened around the lone white spire, and the heat soared still higher. The superheated air itself burned as the ring closed. A titanic vortex of fire grew, spinning faster and faster as it reached up into the heavens. The fortress shuddered and smouldered under the assault, but still stood defiant as the fiery pillar roiled higher still. Its head split to become hydra-like as it reached out to touch the face of the stolen suns themselves. Raw plasma siphoned into the spinning funnel directly from the bloated bodies of the caged suns. These coronas were momentarily joined as they poured their fusing mass onto the fortress below. The White Flame's fortress was engulfed in the living blood of the suns, pounded by unthinkable energies in the whirling atomic firestorm. No clever construct or technology could keep such energy at bay for long. The inrush of elemental forces ate through stone and drank metal. Organics, the fragile inhabitants of the fortress, flashed into expanding gas in a split second. The whole great edifice, with its high white walls and sloping gables, its rooftop gardens and bladed oubliettes, vanished with an ear-splitting roar. With one task done, the stolen suns stopped their single focus and split and rushed outward to Aelindrak, a region of Comora which is wreathed in shadow, and this darkness now recoiled. The city would suffer beneath the burning lash for many hours, but never again did the stolen suns focus fully on a single stronghold as they had on the White Flame's fortress. And then again came on Vect's castigators, who had walked through the flame. Their metal hides were invulnerable to the heat, just as their insensate minds were immune to the pain. They set about completing Vect's reconquest of Comora with undefeatable determination and unshakable purpose. They terrorized the populace and imposed Vect's rule of law with unimaginable cruelty, all while dreaming they stood as heroes on the battlefield once more. And so Vect is put back atop the pile of his rivals, for who can face his control of the city when he has the castigators and the stolen suns to unleash? And that, my friends, is how Vect took back control of his city, with tortured souls and sterilization. So now turn things to you, listener. What do you think of Vect's hidden weapons and the destruction they can reap on the large and small scale? Do you buy him as the scheming ruler of Comora? Have you got a tan under the light of the stolen suns of Comora? I Trifactor 2000 friend. Comment down below.